Hey Queen, so this is season 3, episode 4 recap of Who is Mr. Robot. This episode is metadata. So we open up with Angela, we're looking at Evil Corp and everything like this, and we're seeing all the shipping drama. Then we see, like the subway when she was with Mr. Robot, Angela. And then we hear about Tyrell, White Rose, and everything like this. We see Darlene and Mr. Robot's little scuffle. Talking about Cisco, I believe, the video of F Society, and then when Darlene was on the computer, and then we see a little bit of Dom, when she was like, oh my gosh, like, who's here? Elliot's here. Now, we go and we see Darlene, and she's asleep on this train, and then she kind of wakes up in a little bit of a panic. She's like passed out, and she's like having a moment and everything like that. So she wakes up and she kind of looks around. There's like an old lady, some young guy, and then like some, I guess like you can say like a kind of a girl her age, so to speak. And then she kind of approaches her and she's like, hey, like, like you kind of took something from me, because she's looking for something, which is why when she kind of wakes up in a panic, she's like, I'm missing something. Basically, she got pickpocketed and she knows that her wallet is gone. Now, you would kind of assume with their conversation that she's like, you know what, where's my wallet and stuff? And this girl's like, I don't know what you're talking about, like, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, you look like you're in a rush to go somewhere. Like, obviously, you know something that I don't, so to speak. And then the girl finally is like, oh, fine, like, I took your wallet. And she's like, open it. And she's like, there should be a Polaroid in there. Now, if you don't remember, this was the photo that Darlene looked at when she was at Elliot's apartment, when she did put in that little thing in his monitor. And she's like, keep the wallet. Like, she just wanted the photo, I guess, like that memory of her childhood, so to speak, if you think about it. And then the girl's like, you don't want your wallet? And Darlene's like, look, I stole from you first. I stole from that old lady. I stole from that guy. I killed a woman. If you don't remember season 2, I think the two-part, like episode 1 and 2 is like when she killed that lady that was in that smart home or something. She mentions that. And then she's like, I killed her. She's like right in the heart with a stun gun or something. And then she goes, this is me, when she walks off. And I was just like, okay, greatest showman. Like, that was a bit dramatic. But anyways, and then we go again with Dom. She's like walking home. So Dom's walking to that safe house with her colleague, that they live, I think, above Darlene or like next, basically whatever. And then she sees that Comet electric car again, the electric company or whatever. And she's kind of always just looking like, which is why I said in kind of one of the other recaps that she's always looking like, she kind of gets this weird feeling and she doesn't know. Really, I mean, if you think about like Stranger Things, I want to say season 1 or season 2, when they have those cars there and it's like, oh, like these plumbers or whatever are here, so to speak. And then they're like, oh, wait, no, that's the government. That's kind of what Dom is kind of looking. So she probably gets a feeling like I'm being watched or something's going to happen or this is just a little odd, instead of just looking to see no one followed her. It's like, this is weird. And then anyways, we see Elliot, and he's like, he's gonna go into the apartment, but he's like looking around, he's looking for the mail, and he's talking about metadata. And he's like, this is the story within the data. And he's like, this is, face value, like, to him, that story, but beyond it, he's like, how, where, and when, and basically who it is, so to speak, the metadata. He says that's illuminating. I was like, Illuminati. And we see Dom and her friend, and then she's like, yo, we've been fished by that URL that he clicked on in the email that Elliot was like supposedly sending to Tyrell. That's what he was thinking. And then we see Darlene, she's walking back, they're freaking out, and then she's like, oh my gosh, like, we gotta like tell Darlene. And then we see, a bunch of photos and data explanation by Elliot, where he's like, oh, like every time you post a photo or something, like you kind of like give these sites, or I guess the world, like your phone model, etc. And I think that's something that Sam Esmail tweeted about. I don't know at the time. And then when Dom is calling Darlene to warn her, she figures out that Darlene left her phone at home. So Elliot's kind of looking like, like someone's calling Darlene, which I guess he finds suspect if you think about Elliot always thinking about being watched or being followed or just being cautious and secure. He's kind of like, like he sees it and then he kind of moves away and he's just waiting for Darlene. And then Dom is saying, you know what, like, I have to do something. So she just walks out, like, calmly, but obviously in a rush because she has to tell Darlene. So she's kind of like, don't look at me, like, don't say anything, blah, 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 act normal, don't blow your cover, basically. And Darlene's kind of like, okay. Like, it was just like, oh, like, I guess my neighbor kind of went out fast or something. But it's like, she's not my neighbor. I don't know who this is. But obviously Dom is like, I had to do something to kind of warn her. And then Darlene goes into the apartment and she sees Elliot. And he's like, oh, like, I thought you were leaving town. And she's like, what are you doing here, etc. Like, they're having like a little unfinished scuffle, so to speak, because that's what she was saying she was going to do. She was going to get in a bus when she put in that thing on his monitor. And he's like, there's no trains, there's a transportation strike. Like, you're obviously lying to me. So what is the deal here? And they're talking about that. And then he also asked, like, how do you afford this apartment? Because he did trace them in the location, the metadata. And it's just like, this is such a nice place for Darlene. Like, Darlene doesn't have money, probably, as Elliot would figure, knowing her as his sister. And he also tells her that she should have walked away and to come with me and everything like that. And when he noticed all the extra hardware and that small modem, it's just, why? That's why, he's here and stuff. And when he goes, he's here, he means like, I'm here, Elliot's here, not Mr. Robot, because that was the whole thing that Darlene kind of ran away because she got into a fight with Elliot, but she was kind of fighting with Mr. Robot, so she kind of doesn't know who she's talking to, unlike Angela, who can, I guess, figure out who Mr. Robot is and who Elliot is. And then she says, if you do anything, like, I'm gonna scream or whatever, like, for help. And then she's kind of saying, if it's him, like, like, back off and stuff. And again, Elliot's like, no, like, it's me, and I'm not gonna hurt you and everything like this. And then they find out that Elliot's using a voice protector, so Dom's colleague can't really hear the conversation. He doesn't know what's happening. He can't get any audio recording that he needs to be like, oh, like, what are they saying? What are they talking about? And it's just like, what, you should have listened and everything like this. And then Elliot's also like, like, why did you hack? Like, we can't really ignore that. And it's kind of like, what else can I do when he's working with them? Because when he says he's working with them, yes, physically it's Elliot and it's still Elliot, but again, it's Mr. Robot. So Mr. Robot still has this plan that Elliot felt he was executing, but now we see like there is this, I guess, unfinished game of chess that Elliot was playing with Mr. Robot in season 2 for control. So Elliot really, I guess if you think about it, lost, but he didn't. It's just like he is lost in his own mind. And then he goes, you know what, like, I'm going to show you something. And we move on to Irving, and he's eating ribs for breakfast. And he's like, oh, ribs for breakfast. Like, most people wouldn't agree with it or something. And we see that he's talking with Angela. Angela's like, like you said, we need to talk. Like, let's get to the point. And he says that there's an update. And on September 29th, that's when we're going to do what we have to do, which is probably what White Rose is talking about with the UN vote and everything with Price, that little drama. And he also says you should be able to manage both of those people. Now, I see it as like Elliot and Tyrell, but then I wondered, like, Elliot and Mr. Robot, like, you're going to be able to like manage Elliot kind of questioning everything, kind of being lost and doing what he's doing, and also at the same time Mr. Robot to be like, get Mr. Robot when we need Mr. Robot, and make sure Mr. Robot does when he is Mr. Robot, along with Tyrell, or again, just Elliot, Mr. Robot, and then Tyrell, kind of throwing these two together, and then Tyrell, so it's 3, but 2, you know what I mean? That's what I was like, I wonder what he means by if you can manage both of these people. And he talks about the shipping delays and everything like this, and obviously Elliot was like changing all the directions online about where this is going to go and where that's going to go and stuff like that. And he was saying, like, having that guy inside was supposed to speed things up, but when everything was being said, it's just like, what, of course, like, we're gonna get this done, I can handle this. Angela's kind of, I guess, biting off more than she can chew. She's not really, I guess, delivering what they want and kind of disappointing them. And also, if you think about it, getting probably Tyrell and Elliot in a very dangerous situation. Maybe Darlene, I wouldn't think about it, but if you think about how everyone's connected, probably. And then when Irving is like, like, this is going to be made to happen, Angela questions about an emergency evacuation to make sure no one important is in the building when stuff goes down or whatever, like they say. And then he's like, we have and stuff, and if you just keep us on the schedule, everything's going to be good. And she also asks if White Rose had shown him something, and he goes, yes. And goes, did you believe in it and everything? And he says that technology is just mind-boggling, and goes about ribs and how, this is probably not real meat. He wouldn't be surprised if it was grown in a lab. And she's kind of like, I'm not talking about that. And it's just like, what? Anything is possible. And with that being said, with the technology being mind-boggling, I was thinking, are we really getting into a time machine? Because we did open with parallel universes and how she has a way to go back to as if nothing ever happened, but then things would not happen as they have. So, you know, like how you say, if you change one thing, like it has all these effects and everything like that. And I think if you've seen the Cloverfield Paradox on Netflix, it's like going to a different world and this is what happened when this happened. And then back in this dimension, like this hasn't happened yet. You know, like that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, does Angela really know what could be the consequences if she changes one thing, so to speak? I mean, given the opportunity, maybe most people would take it, but I guess that is like their flaw. Like we don't think about the bigger picture. We're too selfish to think about ourselves in whatever dimension we think we're in, and that's ours to change. But hey, that's Angela. And then you go to Darlene and Elliot. You know, they're talking about stage 2 and how that was never really called off, and you know, blowing up the buildings with Tyrell and everything, and how that could have all just been an anonymous tip that Elliot could have sent in to the FBI, like he did with those 2 other people that had the stuff on the phone and they were selling the private data, and then the guy who was he what was he doing? He was cheating the emissions tests, and Darlene's kind of like, you know, just like what's going on, and Elliot kind of wants to know and see where it all leads to, and you know, find them. And that's when Darlene is like, this isn't really you. You're not the person to blow things up and like kill people or hurt people. Like that isn't you. But I mean, in a way it is, because that is Mr. Robot, but maybe he is becoming Mr. Robot more and more. Like it's 2 separate things that's like an on and off switch, but eventually like they may merge and just become one, so to speak. And that's when he says, you know, there's just something inside that won't let go, and it's really not over. And I guess if you think about it, like if it wanted to stop, it can't stop. And when I say it, it's kind of like Elliot and Mr. Robot at the same time. Like maybe they both have the same intentions. Mr. Robot is just more aggressive at how he goes for it, and Elliot is like, I don't know, but Elliot is probably using this excuse like it's not me, like it's Mr. Robot, like, you know, like Darlene, you know me, and like I wouldn't do it, but I'm still doing it. And even though like he says like, oh, you know, like I'm gonna do it, but I'm not doing it. I just want to see where it leads. Like maybe they're becoming the same person and thought and mind and everything, personality, if you think about it. And it's just like, you know what? Just go back to that place where you weren't that person. And Darlene is like, can you though? And he's like, yeah, I can. But Elliot is kind of switching to in and out. I think after that gunshot, like he's probably just like totally all over the place now. So, I mean, we really don't know again. And then when there's a way like how they can end it, so to speak. I guess Elliot changing into Mr. Robot, I guess in a way believing it. Um, we go to this door, which is obviously Darlene's old apartment. He's like, oh, you know, the landlord never changed the locks and stuff, and I got the key after you left, etc. And he's just like, Darlene's like, okay, like I don't see what we're supposed to be doing here. And then he says, you know what, like if I go to sleep at night, I need you to watch me and make sure that I don't become this robot and like, you know, like sleepwalk, I guess, like just watch out for him as a sibling. And it's just like, you know, like you're my brother, like it's weird, but whatever, like I'm gonna do this. And also with that, um, if he does lead Darlene to Tyrell and the Dark Army, she does kind of ask like, if I die or like something happens and like I get hurt or whatever, like are you gonna like do something to like avenge my death, like vengeance? And he's kind of like, yeah, like I'm in. And because she's like, I do the same for you, and he's just like, yeah. But then I'm like, would Elliot really know? Or I mean, not that he has like a bad heart, but like I feel like he would just let it happen and be like, oh, and then like cry about it when he's lonely, you know, like I don't know with Elliot. When it came to that, I was like, oh, Darlene, I don't know if your brother is really up for that, but okay, he said so. I mean, he said yes. And then when we move on to this guy eating Fruity Pebbles, there's like the phone call and it's ringing, and then it's an FBI raid, and he has that F Society mask and stuff. So who really knows who this guy is and what bigger part he plays in as the series progresses? But we're probably gonna find out. And then Elliot's on the computer and he's asking if he died, would that revolution have died too when Tyrell shot him in the stomach? Because you have to think about it. Even though he shot Elliot, he obviously shot Mr. Robot too, because it is the same person, just switching up, I guess. So even though White Rose could get rid of Elliot, White Rose is like after everything's over. So if they would have killed him before, I mean, would they really have another person to get everything done that they have to get done? Would they be able to find another person as close to Elliot? Would they kill Darlene? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Darlene's kind of useless if you think about it. I mean, they got rid of Cisco. Would Angela be over? Would Angela even really be involved? Or, things like that. Like, it kind of just makes you wonder a little, because, I mean, Angela is involved and knows who White Rose is, but if that were to have happened before she is supposed to be controlling Elliot, it's kind of like, And then he's just basically, just whatever. And the Dark Army and stuff like this, and how Mr. Robot is the one who wants to do this terrorist attack, and that kind of excites him. And he could tip the FBI and be normal. And as he's like thinking about all this, Angela's kind of like, oh, like, what's that? What are you looking at? And he's just like, oh, nothing, whatever. It's just, boring stuff. And she asks, are you still coming to that company party tonight? And he's like, yeah, And when she walks away, his like co-worker that's next to him is like, Gert, like, dude, you have to like tap that and stuff. And it's kind of like they know each other, so And then when we're talking about the F Society video, we're back, and it's like, oh, you posted this F Society video, that guy from who was in that FBI raid, and it's Dom and her coworker interviewing this guy, and they're like, like, you posted it, like, it led all back to you, and she wants to know who's behind it, like, who's the Elliot, I mean, who's the leader? Is it Elliot? Is it Darlene? Is it Tyrell? Like, does he know those people? And then when she mentions if White Rose is the leader, he kind of triggers something, and it's just like, huh. And then he kind of says, like, they don't really have a leader, and it's just F Society. So, I mean, that's very vague if you think about it, because it's like, we know it's F Society, obviously, by the video and stuff, like Dom and her coworker, but they want to know, like, who is the person who posted it, since Darlene was like, oh, like, it wasn't me, and, like, I didn't do this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I know who it is, but I don't, because, obviously, since it was posted through the same account, it wasn't Darlene, and I guess, it's not really a pre-saved video, so it's like, who did it? Who posted it? But anyways, we see Elliot, he came back from his work party, because Darlene was like, where are you? And she's like, oh, whatever, like, I did a bunch of 8-ball, like, I'll be able to stay awake and watch you. And they're talking about, like, a signal to see, and when it's Elliot, when it's Mr. Robot, because obviously if it's Mr. Robot, it's going to be like, why are you here, Darlene? Because only Elliot knows that Darlene's supposed to be there watching him. And then when she asks, like, are you sleeping? It's like, no, I'm going to go walk Flipper first and everything like this. And then they're talking about, again, following Tyrell and the Dark Army, etc., Die, Vengeance, and everything he's in. And he also apologizes for what he did and stuff. But again, we have to remember, I guess Elliot doesn't realize what he's doing, but he does realize that he is hurting Darlene, and I guess kind of pushing her away and kind of making himself more lonely and more anxious, so to speak. And it's just like, like, he just has that moment, and then he hugs her and everything. So we go back to the F Society video, and this, like, apartment and everything, and that FBI raid, and we are still asking about White Rose and everything, but the Dark Army really isn't alone. And even though the Dark Army isn't alone, like, Dom's coworker is like, we have one of the operatives of F Society, the Dark Army, like, whatever, but he's like, we have one. Like, I think Dom's coworker is just, like, seeing things at face value, and like, oh, like, this is it, like, this is our lead, like, this is gonna be our source, like, he's gonna give them what Darlene couldn't give them, he's gonna drop information, he's gonna drop the ball. But Dom is kind of like, there has to be something more to this and everything like this. And she just knows that there's more to the story, and she doesn't like whatever he's giving her, like, like, why did he surrender, basically, like, why did he give himself up, like, what was the whole plan about that? Was it to throw them off, or just to make them waste just a little bit of time for Elliot to do what he has to do? She's kind of like, this is too easy, so to speak. So that is that. And he also doesn't really believe in White Rose. He says that White Rose is like a mythical leader on the dark web or something, something like that. And it's just like, well, you never know. And we move into Darlene, and she's kind of like looking up like Budapest on her laptop, if you don't remember. Like, that's basically what Cisco was saying, like, oh, why don't we just be a normal couple and like look up vacation packages or whatever. So I guess she's kind of missing Cisco in this moment. And then we see the door open, or we hear a door opening, and we see it's Elliot leaving, but it's really Mr. Robot leaving. So he's kind of in that little switch, and she's following him. And, she's walking through these tents and people through the streets and everything, and she's kind of nervous. And then she sees him with Angela, and then like a little siren happens, and she like hides behind the wall. And then when she looks back, she sees them like go into the subway, and they're going down. And when she follows them, they're like already across, and like a train is passing, and they like disappeared up. And when she goes back up, she sees that they get into a taxi and they leave. So obviously, maybe they're like, oh, maybe we're being followed or something, or oh, let's be safe, like let's just go now. And then we go back to Tyrell, and he sees all this rerouted shipment, and he's basically freaking out because it's like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna screw up everything, I guess. And Angela's like, like whatever, we're gonna be okay. And why would you agree to this timeline? Because Tyrell's kind of like still freaking out. And she's like, you know what, like we're gonna be okay. Like we just needed some options and stuff, and we just need to do what we had to do. And he's saying like, he had this perfect plan and stuff, and like what happened, like Angela, like we trusted you, like you're supposed to be the one who's like said you're gonna do this, why aren't you doing what you said you're gonna do? And they need to speed this up and manage him and stuff. And he's like, you know what, this is all your fault, and it's also all his fault. And he mentions telling the Dark Army about what Elliot did, and she says we can't really do that because there's going to be consequences for all of us. It's not just like, it's you tell them and like he gets it, like you're gonna get it, I'm gonna get it. And so I mean they'll probably be killed. But Tyrell's like, well, I don't care, like it's like he'll save himself. But I mean with the Dark Army, it's like, will he really though? Because I mean Joanna's dead, so what is he really gonna go back to? And like the kid is in social services. I mean he really doesn't know that yet, but if you think about it, it's like Tyrell really doesn't know like what he thinks he knows, I guess. I don't know, it's whatever. And then they're talking about the trucks and the planes to do this and to do this on the west coast and the east coast, and how they'll transport everything, but then it's going to like have too much like activity and be very suspicious and everything. So then she says, we'll revoke his access and stuff like this. And when she's saying that, it's kind of like, what, they're going to talk to each other, and like Elliot has to face it. So when Tyrell's kind of like making all this talk about Elliot, it's like you're a liability and stuff, and there's no on and off switch. Mr. Robot, kind of snapped and said, you know what? I'm here now, and don't forget really who started this and like why you're here. And Tyrell's kind of saying like, you know what, you're inferior and everything like this, and this taking over thing of Mr. Robot and Elliot, because Tyrell, I guess, is so infatuated with Elliot, so to speak, in this idea that they have like this grand reasoning in the cosmos, and their existence is kind of like Mr. Robot doesn't really see things that way. Mr. Robot has his own plan, but I guess playing to Tyrell, he's kind of like, you know what, he kind of says, with this revolution I allowed you here, and he's like, I could have pulled that trigger twice and stuff. And he's kind of like choking him and like has him up against the wall. After that, Tyrell's like, like I want him out, like he's too crazy and stuff. But then Mr. Robot starts fading away, and Elliot starts coming into reality. So it's just like, I guess this is where Tyrell's kind of seeing that switch between the people, and then Angela's kind of like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? Like, playing it off as like very innocent and like very like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, just talk to me, just look into my eyes, let me know it's you and stuff. But obviously she's trying to like distract Elliot a little and like keep his focus away, and just to be like, Angela, and to snap Mr. Robot back into existence. Because it's like, when Elliot is Mr. Robot, he doesn't really remember anything, and he doesn't know what's going on. But if Elliot is the one that remembers and stuff, then everything is over, everything is like goes down the drain, so to speak. And then it's just like, why is Tyrell here and stuff and everything? And it's like, look me in the eyes again. And she gives him a shot and goes like, he's here or whatever. And he's like, Tyrell and stuff. And she's like, it's okay, it's okay. And Elliot this whole time was kind of just saying like, like, please tell me, like, you kind of know what's happening or whatever. And then we cut into Dom and Darlene. They're at a bar and stuff, and she's like, I've only gotten one development from you, Darlene. Like, you're really not being like a good source, so to speak. And like, you're the brother of the person who like is supposed to be working with Tyrell, which he is, but like they just need that like grounded, and for Darlene to be the one, I guess, to figure it out, to relay to them and to tell them like what she knows and stuff. So they're having their own little thing. And when it's just like, what did you talk about and everything, Darlene is kind of like, look, I just want to be normal, like just buy me a drink and like let's just talk like normal people, instead of doing this and that, having like this be confidential, this be her life, this be under surveillance 24/7, because Darlene is kind of just like, I guess, too stressed out by it, and it's just like, ugh, like, just let me live my life, you know? And how when Elliot almost blew it and stuff, that's when Darlene kind of begs the question, like, can we just do it my way? Like, I know Elliot best, I know probably how to get to him and stuff. And then she's like, no, like, I just want to know, like, information and stuff, and like, what do you have? And that's when Darlene again, it's like, no life because of like you and like the FBI and everything and how she's in there. And then she asks Dom, like, what part of Jersey are you from? And like, do you have any siblings? Like, basic questions in her relationship status. And I think this touches upon Dom's sexuality being within the FBI. And then it's just like, like, oh, whatever. And then Dom starts asking questions back. And she mentions Cisco because of the relationship. And she's like, like, you were there. Like, what happened to Cisco? And then Dom is just like, this is why, like, I don't do like this whole social thing or like talk to people and stuff. And then Dom is also saying like how she feels something big is going to happen soon and she needs something. And Darlena's like, you know what, like, I'll do basically intel gathering, but I can't have a wire. And she's just like, well, like, that's not possible. And Darlena's like, well, like, screw you. That's the only way I'm going to be able to get you what you want and like get you what you need and stuff. And then she also says how even though she may have immunity, she's going to lose her brother after, like, they find out about Tyrell and their connection, because Elliot is part of this whole hack and stuff. And even though Darlene, again, has her immunity from being that source, that doesn't mean that Elliot's safe and let's say Angela will be safe, because obviously everyone's going to go down. And then that also means, like, if the Dark Army somehow finds out that Darlene was the one who gave out this information to the FBI, they could probably have her killed or just have someone infiltrate the FBI and then kill her and find out where she is and stuff. Like, it's not going to be that hard, with White Rose and what White Rose does. And then we move on to Elliot being dead to Tyrell, basically, and how there's going to be too much attention, and how White Rose has a strict timeline between Tyrell and Irving talking. And like, Tyrell's kind of like, like, why was this deadline changed? Like, that kind of set Tyrell off, because it's like they have to do this and like by Monday. But it's because of Elliot that Mr. Robot and Tyrell can't do their plan. Angela can't really control them like she said she would, and like that was her job and everything. And it's funny. And we move on to how Tyrell lost his partner and everything's over and stuff. And Irving's like, like, you and Elliot have issues, but like, you still need to get the job done. Like, that's your thing. Like, you and Elliot are supposed to be working on this, Mr. Robot and Elliot. I mean, Mr. Robot and Tyrell. And then he's like, you know what? You are a god. If Elliot's not a god, if Elliot's letting you down, like, you're a god. Like, you're both not gods. Like, he's playing into Tyrell's like mind again and stuff. Like when he lied about him with the kids and his family. And he says to him, like, like, you're destined and you just can't turn away from destiny and everything. And then he's like, okay, like, you know what, like, I'm gonna have to do what I'm gonna have to do. And Tyrell also mentions how he hasn't been able to connect with the baby monitor, and he hasn't really seen anything about Joanna, and she's probably keeping a low profile. It's like, just check up on them for me and like make sure they're safe. And he says that he wants to leave to the Ukraine with Joanna and his son, after Monday and after everything happens. And Irving's just like, oh, we'll get into that, because obviously Tyrell doesn't know that Joanna was shot in the head and the baby is in social services. Like, I mean, what is, if they tell Tyrell that, he's probably going to call everything off or something. So Irving's just like, yeah, like, well, we'll make that happen for you. And it's just like, check on Joanna, and we leave it at that, so to speak. And then he also asks for one last thing, which is the full force of the Dark Army to get what they have to get done. And it's just like, who knows if they'll just get rid of Tyrell, because I mean, Tyrell really has nothing left, and Tyrell's kind of also taking time bomb, if you think about it. Not as valuable as Elliot, but still easily expendable. So I don't think they would really care if they lose Tyrell. And then we see Angela and Price having a phone call, and she says, like, Elliot needs to be fired. He needs to be banned from everything. Like, all the stuff that wasn't letting him be able to connect and mess with the shipping stuff. And she's like, I just have my reasons, and he's just a number, he's expendable, and she'll return the favor, and like, I'm good for it. So I was like, Angela and Price. I was like, okay. And she says, like, her discretion and everything, like, that's important. And Price is like, this is your request. Like, this isn't White Rose. This isn't Dark Army. Like, this is you. And she's like, yep, this is me and stuff. And he's like, okay, well, it's done. Like, your wish is my command, so to speak. And when they ask, like, are you still here after the phone call? It's like, yes, Mr. Robot is still here. Angela is like with Elliot, Mr. Robot, as she made that phone call. And then he's like, relax, it's me and stuff. And he's asking, like, what happened? And she says, like, Elliot came out, Elliot appeared, and I had to knock him out to, like, save us because he's going to see everything he's going to know. And then it's just like, ugh, whatever. So we're good to go. And she wants him to stay there the weekend so she can, like, see and stuff. I mean, what Darlene is supposed to be doing to make sure that it isn't Mr. Robot. But Angela's like, so when I know it's Elliot, when I know it's Mr. Robot, and when we can do things, and so I'm in control. And then it's just like, Elliot saw both Tyrell and Die, and that's obviously not good for them. But it's just like, well, Elliot, remember? That's kind of the question. And she's like, it was a few seconds, but like, they always still have to remember that Elliot is so unpredictable in his own way. And she's just like, like, I'll handle it. And you just need to fight him off. Like, Mr. Robot needs to fight for control and not let Elliot come back, not let Elliot win. And then she gets a text message, and it's Irving, and he says, like, they're going to be ready to go on Monday. So that's in the next episode, which I do remember watching is going to be very intense and very fun. And I think that was the first, like, I don't know, like, it was a big production for the next episode. But anyways, we'll get into that when we get into that. But I really want to know what y'all think about White Rose, and is there really a time machine and all this parallel universe talk in the series. It's very different, and I feel like leading into, like, an American Horror Story thing if you think about it. But, like, I don't know, it's getting good, y'all. It's getting good. And I am, like, rewatching everything to recap and stuff. And I don't know, just share everything in your comments down below. But anywho, I want to say hi to Rami Malek. Stay safe and God bless.